The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guest today is Mayor Ian Boddy of the city of Owen Sound. And yes, lots of questions to ask Ian because he's got lots of information. And I also know he's been traveling a little bit. Ian, welcome. Good to see you.
It's good to see you.
Now, I have to say that this technology thing, you've mastered it.
Yeah, we've had a couple of practices over the last couple of years, haven't we?
Yeah, just a bit, but it is working. So we're grateful for the technology to work today. Anyway, all kinds of things have been happening here in the city. Lots of big developments and lots of big developments on the horizon too. But we'll talk about all of that. You have been doing some traveling, and you were. I know you mentioned at the last city council you'd been to the auto show, but more recently you've been to Bruce Power. What's that all about?
Well, I went to the CNA nuclear conference. I can't remember if we talked about it the last time I was on or not, which was in Ottawa, looking at the nuclear industry in Canada. And of course, we're not getting to net zero by 2050 in Canada without nuclear. That's, it's clean energy, et cetera, carbon free. Though there may be other risks, but it's something that's going to be needed. Then from there, I went to the car show, or the International Auto Show, supporting Cobble Beach, who, of course, puts on their big Concord Elegance here. And so they had a display, and so we went down and basically told people where Owen Sound was, where Cobble Beach was, what the car show's about. And I think they had about 300,000 people through there in a week. So that's 300,000 people, approximately, or a little bit less than, that learned about Owen Sound and about this region. And last week, I got an invitation over with Gary Sims, the head of the hospital, some counselors from Meaford, Travis Dodd went with me from the city, to tour Bruce Power Plant B. And I've been to Bruce Power before, where I sat in the bus and drove past and looked at the big buildings. This was the first time in my life I've been inside, and how enormous it is and how big it is, and what it takes to keep it efficient is kind of mind-boggling. So it was pretty neat to go through it. One of the key messages that we got is, of course, once the nuclear plant's turned on, it's turned on. There's no scaling it up, scaling it down. However, at night, they produce more steam than necessarily they run through the turbines, because they don't need that power. And although they get paid for it, it's not really generating electricity that they can't use. So that's certainly where the something like the TC Energy pump storage, hydrogen, other energy storage opportunities are going to become important in the future, so that something like Bruce Power can run all night long at full capacity, producing electricity, and that energy can be stored. The main reason why we're there is to look at the process for medical isotopes. And of course, they're producing more and different isotopes for the entire world. Cancer treatment, diagnostic, et cetera. And it's a pretty neat process that they have going over there. Although, to look at it, it's a box on the wall where they shoot the host materials in glass tubes into the reactor. It sits there for a week and comes out energized or radioactive into nuclear isotopes. So really an amazing process, and great opportunities for us as they build up those medical isotopes for the world here at Bruce Power.
It's interesting. I recall taking a tour of Bruce Power when it was operated by Ontario Hydro. So you know how long ago that was. And you're right. It doesn't when you go in there, it doesn't look all that remarkable. It's machinery. It's because of course the actual operation is at the atomic level, the nuclear level. You can't see it. It's also very dangerous to human beings because we have to be behind shielding. But at the same time, it's quite remarkable use of physics.
Well, there's 4 different stations or levels within there, and as you're coming back through, you've got to be tested for radioactivity each step of the way, and so like this, it's the safety is primary. Reminders of how we walk upstairs, how we put hands on railings, all those things are just built into everybody's mindset as we went through the building, and it was pretty impressive.
Yeah. It's when you think about the impact of those isotopes, I think you've mentioned in the past that sterilization of medical equipment has a huge role in the isotope production. That's one of the primary goals is that to sterilize medical equipment.
Well, they've been using or making a cobalt-60 for quite a while, and it was used for sterilizing, I forget the percentage now, but a big percentage of all the PPE around the world during COVID came from Bruce Power. Now they're adding lutetium and other different cancer-fighting isotopes. So it's pretty amazing. So right now, they're saying it takes about, after they go through the system for a week, they come out, they have to hold them for a day until they cool off. Then it's a couple of days to send them to pharmaceutical companies in Germany, which are specialized at converting them to medicine that can be used. And they have another 7 days, so approximately 7 days to get them to Germany, get them processed. Another approximate 7 days once processed to get them to the hospitals around the world and the clinics and get them into use. So it has to happen quickly, and with that, there's great opportunities for this area for people that are packaging those isotopes and getting them there. And we have a plant here in Owen Sounder, Steve Kahn, that's putting together the packaging for it. The only Canadian packager. The opportunities for our hospital, if we want to do testing, we're already doing chemotherapy. We haven't been doing radiation at this hospital as of yet, but now we've got opportunities that are growing for us to become even that much more of a regional center, and our hospital to be more of a higher capacity regional hospital. So the opportunities are pretty amazing, as we learned last week.
Well, I know that there have been always been plans for cancer treatment, using radiation at Grey Rouge Health Services. I've seen rough drafts of it, but as always, it depends on who's paying the bill, and so we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, and just even the research and things that we've got opportunities for human sciences or medical research, and pulling all the research together here in some kind of a central place is, the mind's going. With
I'm sure. I'm sure, and the opportunities are phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, let's turn to the concerns of the city. That sounds rather highfalutin, but let's talk about something called a flocculator. What is a flocculator?
I almost had to spell that to make sure that I pronounce it right here.
Right.
And I was looking at the pictures and I still can't describe it. So as you can imagine, water comes in from the lake. So now we're talking about water treatment coming to your tap. That's first step. Water comes in, it comes up through a sand, or maybe comes in and goes down through a sand filter, et cetera, to be cleaned out. They add they chlorinate it to make sure that it's clean and safe all the way through the pipe till it gets to your tap, so you can turn it on. Even if you've been away for a month, it's there, it's ready, and you can drink it immediately. So sometimes, and it's amazing how good these guys are that run our water treatment plant. We get a big storm, we get some soil that's washed out into the bay. You can see the brown color in the bay. You can see it, after a big storm going down the Sydenham River when you're crossing the bridges. There's certain sediment in there, and they need to get that sediment out. So they use a stuff. I'm sticking for a word, but they use things that allows the sediment to attach to it, and it gets caught in the filter better than if they didn't. And that's the flagellant. So to be able to get this jelly-like material mixed through the water, there's it's almost like there's a big mattress going into the tank of water that's on wheels that spins it around, so the mattress keeps going back and forth and around to mix up that water. And that unit has been there since it was built in 1960, which is unbelievable. We've got two sides, two holding tanks or filter tanks. And this piece of equipment rotates through, making sure that the, there we go, flagellant gets attached to the right place in the water and gets mixed up. So we've had a little breakdown on that, which is an emergency thing to get it fixed as soon as possible. We still have that other whole system going right next to it, but we'll get this fixed up and get it going. So we've always got both systems ready to go, and if there's ever a breakdown, we don't want to be caught.
Well, I noticed as I was watching the operations committee meeting, the point was made that this is a custom piece of equipment. It's got to be manufactured because it dates from 1960 and there's no spares. So
that's why I can't describe it very well, to try and give you a visual description of it, that it's kind of one of a kind. And I'm sure they won't like me talking about it being like a big metal box spring or something like that, but it is, yeah.
It'll be interesting to see, and it's one of those funny things that you don't realize you need it until it breaks.
Well, and that's then
you got to deal with it.
Yeah. Then, naturally, you've got pumps and you've got backup pumps and redundancy built into the system, so the water is always safe. And as I said, the guys that run the systems down there, the water system, the wastewater system, have so much unique knowledge and expertise that it's pretty amazing what they do day in and day out to keep us safe.
I agree, and I've had a tour of the water system, both the wastewater and the drinking water on the supply side, and it's quite incredible. And they actually love to share what they know and to describe the processes. And one of the things that I found remarkable on the tour I was on is they showed us some of the original cedar piping from our water system that has been recovered and is preserved there at the filtration plant. So when you think about it, that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, there's a piece there. There's a piece up the works department, and we saw some pieces coming out of the. Now they may have been wooden pilings that went in when they took out the 10th Street Bridge that fit together the same way. It's neat to think that's what they used at one point.
Yeah. Well, we have to remember that Owen Sound was once built on a swamp.
Yes. Not once built on a swamp. It was built on a swamp, and it's still kind of a swamp underneath. One of our water engineers, or head of water work stuff, Matt Prentice, likes to point out that some of our water, more the lead side, some of our water pipes were put in by people that had a fond memory of Confederation. So, that's how old our system is, and we've steadily replaced it as we've had frozen pipes or rebuilt streets and upgraded it along the way.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, let's move on from broken flocculators to another big ticket item that's coming down the pipe. Sorry, and that is, of course, the Alpha Street reconstruction project, and that's going to be a big one. We've had in my time in Owen Sound, we've had a number of very big projects. 10th Street Bridge, as you mentioned, 2nd Avenue, Big Dig 1 and Big Dig 2. Before my time, there was the removal of the west side entrance to the city and straightening out 10th Street, coming down the hill.
Yeah.
And
I was in about grade 8 for that one.
Yeah.
9th Street Bridge has been rebuilt. 8th Street Bridge,
Yes.
I think, has been rebuilt along the way. Certainly 8th Street Hill, and that's probably the second most recent big project after 10th Street, if I remember it would be. And we learned quite a bit from the 8th Street experience as we look at Alpha Street. So we had a public meeting last week, even though it isn't required. We had a public meeting to get feedback from neighbors and citizens on the different options that we have with that. So it is a recognized trucking route in the official plan, in the provincial official plan. It's somewhat of a gradual hill compared to some of the others. So for grain trucks trying to get to the grain elevators, which continues to be a big industry, removal of salt from the grain elevator to spread on roads over the winter, those trucks tend to use Alpha Street. So over the years, it's become beaten down. The water and wastewater system underneath is not in good shape. So it's time to upgrade the infrastructure under the ground and that hill. So we looked at, we want a third lane, sort of a truck lane. Do we want sidewalks on both sides? And what ended up being the recommendation from staff that I think is probably the leading project is to put the sidewalk again on one side of it, but widen it out so you've got bicycle lanes going up, not on the roadway, but above the curb, along by the sidewalk for getting up and down the hill.
So kind of like 10th Street East is out past Georgian College. And
yeah, 8th Street, I think.
10th Street. 10th Street was done that way. 8th Street has bike lanes, but they're on the same level as the road surface.
Okay, I think once you get up sort of towards Georgian College, Sydenham School, out to the hospital, I think at that point,
yeah,
the riding lane or the mobile active participation, active transportation, still a better word I'm looking for, I think is along the side of the sidewalk there. Active participant, yeah.
Right.
Whatever.
I have to say that I and this is just an observation, Ian. I was in London last week, and they've got a lot of bike lanes on both sides of the street in the downtown core with luminescent lane markers. And I'm going to tell you that's a great way to slow traffic down. I don't know how they plow the snow in London, but they seem to have done it. With they've got the bike lanes plowed, the streets are plowed, but it certainly does narrow the streets, because in the older section of town, they've only got a limited right of way. But it was a bit of an interesting observation for me to see that. I hope Owen Sound doesn't plan to put those kind of curbs and markers in it. It sounds like you've got a better plan for Alpha Street.
Well, each time we do a street, whether it be 8th Street, we do put in lanes for bicycling and try and add those wherever we can. Certainly out past the Bayshore and 3rd Avenue going out towards Leith, as we've redone that, we've added bicycling lanes. And so we're trying to add those wherever we can as we do improvements.
Now, as you do the project, will you have to go down almost to the base and do and redo things like water and sewer and utilities?
Yeah, that's the plan. Yep. Whenever you do something like that, and they've got to be as old as that hill, and I don't know how old that hill is. I know the houses up along the top would be built in the early to mid 60s. So I assume that the road is approximately that age or older.
Yes, I have a vague recollection of seeing that road marked on very early maps of the city. But what it was like then, I mean, it was as straight as a die then, but whether it was just a dirt road or not, I don't know. It was kind of like one of the ways out of the city.
Yeah.
So,
Well, with the old hospital being there, it was certainly service to the bottom of the hill, and I suspect in the early '60s, when the homes were built up along the top on Alpha and into Westmount, that they're probably serviced from Alpha Street Hill. So that would be early '60s. So that's a while ago.
and like you say, there has been grain traffic, and that road went right down into the industrial heart of the west side because not far off. Well, you come into 14th Street, and you've got Kennedy's, you've got all of the industries plus the railway are all up in that sort of area that's now developed.
Well, certainly Harrison Wood was in around across the street from where the Legion is. Both sides of the block by the Legion were furniture factories. So, yeah, a lot of it would have gone out by railway, which ran through there. But there's certainly be some industry being serviced from there. And again, for some of us that remember the old 10th Street West Hill, that was an S bend, it would have been really hard for trucks to come down there. And I'm sure they're more comfortable coming down Alpha way back then.
Very true, very true. And I first came to Owen Sound in the mid 70s, and I think that had just been completed within a year or two. So that's straightening out, because I have seen pictures there from the 60s that show it being at the old configuration of that S bend.
So I'm going to guess 70 to 72, somewhere right in around there. I'm not exactly sure.
Just about when Owen Sound went wet.
I guess so. Yeah.
Okay. No connection whatsoever. But the question I was going to ask you is, the plan is there, but has any start date been indicated, or is that still dependent upon contracts being let and all that stuff?
I believe, yeah, they'll have a set date, and I can't remember off the top of my head. I think we're looking at starting in 2024. There'll be engineering done throughout this year. I think the report sort of set out milestone dates that they're aiming for, but it's over the next couple of years.
Sure. And will there be provincial funding involved in this project?
Certainly, we get the infrastructure grant, yes, that we get annually will go towards this.
Sure. Well, it'll be something to watch, and I'm quite sure it'll be something for people to comment on.
I'm sure they will.
Now, have you got your white construction helmet? Your white hard hat?
Yeah, there's usually one kicking around the back of my car with a pair of work boots and an orange vest and glasses, just in case I get invited quickly to a construction site. I'm ready to go.
Oh, good. Well, I'm sure this'll there'll be times when you'll be invited out to that.
Probably.
Well, let's move on to something else. Let's talk for a bit about transit. And I as I recall, our transit system is expecting new buses. Have they arrived yet?
So this company took over, I think, in August of 2022, and of course, they had to get the contract order the buses. The buses take a while to be put together, and with COVID and supply management, et cetera, everything got held back. So it's my understanding they have the buses, and we should see them on the street by the end of March, early in April. They'll be low floor, easier to get onto than the temporary ones they're using right now, and we'll be set for the rest of the contract.
Well, that's something to look forward to. So for those people who are bus watchers, and especially those people who are transit users, there's something to look forward to this spring.
Yep, coming soon.
Well, that's the best way to put it. Coming soon. let's see what else. Oh, yeah. I know what I wanted to ask you about is our city's been winning some awards. I think there was the River District won a couple of awards recently.
It won one, and the multicultural festival that we did around Canada Day also. So different organizations. This one's, I believe, the Ontario Tourism Award. And again, I don't have my exact sheets in front of me. You like to submit your projects to those so that you see how you compare to others in the province. And we've been pretty successful with awards the last couple of years from those. Both of them, the DIA becoming the River District and all the marketing around that was an award winner. So that's good. And that's, I think, well, I haven't heard anyone use, other than I just did, I haven't heard anyone use the phrase DIA for quite a while. And that's their main goal for rebranding, is getting people to keep using that River District for downtown. And it seems to be working. So that's a success. The other one for Canada Day, we wanted to, instead of doing candy floss and sparklers and hamburgers and, the same thing, we wanted to try and reflect Canada Day more of what Canadian society is compared to what it was in 1950. So we did a special with our local history. We did certainly a Black Heritage Day, and had Black presentations and music, etc., which was a great success. We did a Youth Day, which was fun for the last day of school, or that first day maybe out of school, and then did a Indigenous Day around reconciliation and, of course, our gardens down there. So it was a really good first year. We're pretty proud of what Jen Wright and her crew put together.
Yeah. Owen Sound, where we've been doing multiculturalism since before it was multicultural.
Yeah, or before Owen Sound was Owen Sound, really.
That's true. That's very true. That's very true. When you think of the Emancipation Festival, it goes back 150 years.
I think we're 170, I think, this year.
Yeah, I was going to say more than 150, so it's got to be
up there. Yeah.
Yeah. Remarkable. And I'm sure that the staff who organized it are also very proud.
Yeah, they did a great job putting both of those together to get those awards, or to get them award quality. Even as a lot of hard work. Putting in the application was the easy part, I suppose. But it's good to see staff being recognized with these awards.
Yeah, because one of the things that I think that we forget is that these events are work. They're hard work, and it's good to see staff rewarded not just locally but recognized provincially, and kind of makes them feel good too. Yep,
exactly.
We have good staff at our city hall, so we got to remember that.
Yeah, I got a really nice email from somebody, and it started off saying, I went into this counter, I went into that counter, and you're going, oh no, what? And it was really complimentary about how knowledgeable staff were, how they hustled to get him what he needed, and somebody that had moved to the area, and it was just little things that he was looking at, but he was able to go to the counter and get great help from the staff, and that's what we strive to do every day, and it's nice to get the positive feedback.
Sure. Well, Ian, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back because I got a lot of more things on my list.
Good.
Friends, I'm David Shearman. This is Politically Speaking. We'll be right back.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
You're watching Rogers TV.
Ani, I'm Carolyn King, and I'm a member of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the creator of the moccasin identifier. Philip Cote, an artist in Toronto here, took and redrew real moccasins. We're starting over with the children. The idea is that they would research whose land their school is built on, near, or what treaty area they're in. And the educational kit that we have has all that information in there. And the children just, love it. My dream is that this province will be covered with moccasin identifiers within the next decade, and they will forever know whose land they're on. That's the goal. Educate and awareness with a nice, simple little program called the Moccasin Identifier.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Hi, and welcome back to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guest today is Mayor Ian Boddy of the City of Owen Sound. And yes, we've got questions. Ian, welcome back.
I hope I have some answers.
Spoken like a true politician. Well, let's talk about one of the other big topics in this city, and it's coming up on the city's agenda, and that is waste management. Let's start at one of the really hot button topics, and that is recycling, because there's big changes in the wind, aren't there?
We want to have big changes in the wind. You know, we look at other communities that have had green bin organic waste pickup for years, and we can't seem to get there. I know just before I went on council in 2010, so I think about 2008, it was going to be millions to try and implement it, and council didn't know how they're going to do it. We had a look at it, I don't know, sometime between 2010 and I think Jim McMahon was still there. So I think 2014, before 2014, it was still going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the hope was that as we get into blue box transition, so the recyclable blue box program, the government is getting the providers, suppliers to take over the cost of that. So Coca-Cola, anybody that's packaging into a can, packaging into a plastic bottle, so, you know, grocery stores, potentially restaurants are going to be responsible for the cost of taking back those recyclable materials and either reusing them, disposing of them. With the cost going to them, then it's going to make them think about using aluminum that might be more easy to recycle than styrofoam that isn't, for example. So we're hoping that by taking the cost off of the municipal taxpayer and it going to the suppliers or providers, it's going to free up enough money to do green bin. The start of the changeover for the blue bin starts this end of June, start of July, I believe, of 2023. The city will still be responsible for some of the blue bin pickup, though. So downtown businesses, commercial offices, churches and things like that, the city's still responsible. So they're not transferring it all over. That causes some confusion and still means that we're going to have to pay for some of the contract to pick those things up. So we've had a waste management study that just came back in. Final came in last week to a committee meeting. Pretty long document that looks at things, and we will look at green bin, some form of green bin, and try and figure out what we can afford to do. One of the things that I calculated, I'm disappointed because I really wanted this. as I think most citizens do. There's approximately 6,800, I think, homes, individual homes that we pick up garbage from. And the cost to go full green bin is like 1 million to 1.6 million. And at 1.6 over approximately 6,800. Now, these are really loose numbers that I was calculating quickly in my calculator. It's over $23,000 a year to go green bin per house. So if taxes are high at $6,000 per house, how do you pay $23,000 per house for a full green bin? So I speculate that I'm hoping that's the gold lined model, and that we can find some different efficiencies for maybe just food waste or different things that we can find a scale that we can afford and at least get it started. It's got to do something, and this was something that we were so looking forward to. If we're over 50,000 people population, then the province has different rules and different pressures that they have to do it. Maybe one of the things we look at is pulling everybody together in Grey County, although not everyone in Grey County has been interested in the past, but maybe we pool and do it together and find a way to find efficiencies. Now, there's a whole bunch of different things we've got to look at. So
Sure.
this is go ahead.
Kind of like the way we do household hazardous waste. It's a shared model, and there are agreements with the various municipalities so that if you live in Meaford, you can bring your HHW to Owen Sound.
Yeah, it's a little different because the city gets a grant from the province to host it, and then we contract to cover those other municipalities. Seems to me this year West Grey opted out, and I haven't talked to Kevin Eccles to find out what the thinking was, whether I don't know, it's expensive to try and do on your own, even if you're getting a bit of a grant. So it works out where we pool all of our resources. But yeah, there's one step that's already doing that. We know that all the landfill sites in Ontario are supposed to be at capacity in less than 10 years. The province has been slow to open up new or expand old. And if you're talking about trying to build more homes faster in Toronto and in Ottawa and elsewhere, where's the garbage going to go? Where's the wastewater going to go? Yeah. We need some tough decisions, and I think we're going to. The province needs to, I think, step up, and if they're going to make these directions, they gotta buck up as well as give directions. But we want green bin. We think it's a huge answer to what we're putting into landfill. If we can start to put that into compost and reuse it in farmers' fields versus putting it into a landfill site somewhere.
Yeah.
It gives us opportunities.
Well, I think that what I'm hearing you say, and I think this is somewhat unique. The first time I've heard it is one of the reasons we don't have green bins here in the city is economies of scale. Is we don't have the critical mass of a Mississauga or a Toronto especially, but even a small to medium sized city of 50, 60, 100,000. We don't have that mass to distribute the cost.
Yeah, it's the cost that will get us, and we need to refresh. And I know it would have been done a few years ago. And look at how Meaford's had it for a few years. What are they doing? How are they doing it? I know when their waste contract came up a year or two ago, they were shocked at the big jump in it. I'm sure we'll be shocked when ours comes up within the next year. It just seems to me that even beyond just spreading the cost over more people, I suppose it's the management of landfill, reducing what goes into landfill, and working together. And not putting it into a diesel truck to be carried somewhere. How's that good for climate change?
Good point. Very good point. And I'm always interested when I talk to other municipal politicians to talk about waste recycling, because it's always interesting to hear their perspectives, and they all have a different perspective on how it's done. So to the audience, if you want to find out, just we try to bring it up in every show with every politician, so just listen to other shows.
Yeah.
So
there's a certain amount of I was going to say dump protectionism, in a sense that this is our dump and there's just enough for us. But at some point, when all the dumps are full, then what? And I think, everyone's going to have to start to think longer term across Grey Bruce, Ontario, longer term thinking of where are we going to be in 15 years, and we're going to need each other to work on that. So
good. Well, it will be an ongoing topic, I am sure. The next time you come back, or the time after that, I'm sure we'll be talking about waste and waste management.
Yeah, I'm confident.
All right, add that one to the permanent conversation list. Well, Ian, let's talk a bit about, speaking of costs, let's talk about the budget, which has been passed, and I believe was the bylaw passed at the last council meeting, or is it coming up from our broadcast date?
I think it is still coming up, probably. I'm going to I'll be going to a meeting later to set the agenda for the next council meeting. I think it's on that.
Yeah.
One of our things that we've had is that our taxes are high in Owen Sound, which means that people would rather live outside of Owen Sound, of course, drive in and use all the services that sort of accelerates that. As we've looked at other communities, I've been preaching this. To really be a community that excels and does well, you have to have jobs. That's obvious. To have jobs, you have to have people that provide the labor. To provide the labor, you have to have housing. It's got to be reasonably costed, and you got to build in all those things. So we've got to start in housing. With some of the housing, we're confident that we're going to attract new citizens, and we're working on industry to get there. But one of the big things we've got to do is try and control our costs. And we know when we look at a BMA study annually that out of the 19,000 to 30,000 category, I think we're the fifth highest taxes per household or per capita. Some of the lowest income per capita, some of the lowest assessment, which doesn't really mean anything. A house is a house is a house. And it might be worth $300,000 here and $800,000 in the town of Blue Mountains, for example, but it's still a house. So, I've argued that we needed new growth, new taxpayers, whether it be commercial, industrial, or residential, to try and get our costs down. The costs go up every year with inflation, with labor contracts, with police, with fire, with with staff at City Hall, outside workers, etc. So in the last couple of years, we've worked really hard to try and get that development going, and it's been mostly housing so far. That new housing coming on and being assessed is giving us an opportunity to bring some of our tax increases down. So last year, I think we were 1.98, if I remember correctly, and the year before we were similar. Those two were lower than just about anyone else in Grey County, with the exception of the town of Blue Mountains that's had huge growth, and were able to keep their tax increases down because of that. And this year, coming in at under 1%, and that's using about 1% of new assessment to get us down there. We're much lower than just about everyone else, than everyone else in Grey County and Bruce County. And as we come in with lower tax increases and they come in with bigger tax increases, they're going to catch up to us, and we're going to move down into that mid-range. We don't want to be the lowest taxpayer or taxed city, because that means we're not providing any services. And certainly our goal is to provide the best services, the best infrastructure that we think the community can afford. And that's always the goal. Provide the best services, best infrastructure you can afford but what can you afford? And if we can get our taxes down into a mid-range compared to everyone else, that we know we're competitive, it helps us to attract even more investment, more development. But then it also helps us to perfect those services, get those services a little bit better when we know that we're in a good tax range to be able to do that. So that's long-term thinking, long-term goals that we've been working on for a few years. And we're pretty happy to see, even with big inflation throughout the country, to be able to come in at under 1% and try and give some relief. So that's on the levy, just to be clear, which is our budget increase, basically, combined with the county and the Board of Education. In the coming month, we will look at how we divide that up between industrial taxpayers, commercial taxpayers, and residential taxpayers. So residential taxpayers always pay one. So if you've got $100,000 worth of investment, you're paying at a ratio of one. $100,000 in commercial, it's about, if I remember correctly, about 1.6. In industrial, it's I think 1.8. They're more. So per $100,000 of assessment, commercial and industrial pay more than residential. But we've had to try and move multi-residential, commercial, industrial down to be more competitive, so we don't lose our factories, which means that it's got to go up a little bit in residential. So when that comes, it's possible that the tax increase to the door of a residence might be a little bit more than 1%, but it still won't be bad, and it'll be lower than anywhere else.
One of the things that I think that I found really helpful to understand is that the budget itself is a rolling budget. And I believe Kate Allen used this very specific term, because it's not a document that is, it's in stasis in that it's set, and that sets the tax rate. But it continues; it's continuously being looked at in terms of the strategic pillars of the city. Its capital is always. The capital budget can be changed and is changing, and in fact, it's longer range. It's not just we're going to spend X in 2023. We're looking ahead to 2024, 2025, 2026. And I think it's a more complex way of understanding municipal finance. But I found it very helpful to know that budgeting is something that is a dynamic process, I think is a good way to put it.
Well, that's modern thinking, and we're really glad that we're there. In the past, a council would have got 2 days or 3 days of budget deliberations, and the first they would get is operations. So anything that's spent, wages, gas, all those things that'll be spent in a year would be decided. Then the next day would be capital. So that's infrastructure. It's streets, it's curbs, it's, arenas, it's pools, it's infrastructure, it's hard things. And it's shown the last couple of years, but often when they got to the operations or to capital, things got cut because they decided the day before on what they're doing on the operations. So things like streets didn't get paved as soon as they should have. And that's, I always refer to as borrowing from the bank of asphalt in a sense, that we've allowed streets to deteriorate to keep taxes low in the past. So what we started to do, and this was started with Deb Haswell's mayor, is look at operations and or capital, I should say, before we looked at the operations budget. So trying to make sure that we had a plan for that. Then we got into 5-year plans, 10-year plans, trying to plan out asset management plans. When is that street likely to deteriorate? And can we start to put a couple of bucks into the reserve now, so we're in better shape when we get to that point? So you're trying to smooth out those ups and downs as you hit them, and level out those costs and plan out what assets are going to have to be replaced and when. When's the roof on such and such building going to have to be replaced? Those types of things. So we've been doing more of that the last couple of years. So we will approve a 5-year plan. And then that includes this year's spending on capital. Next year, we'll look at next year. And it's possible that those things will change as other priorities come up or as council identifies other priorities. But so we're still making budget decisions each year, but now we're planning them out over a number of years based on the strategic plan and trying to manage the assets and do more asset management.
Well, I noticed also that as part of the budget discussion, actually not as part of the budget discussion, but there was a piece that came in afterwards that's part of the financial spending of the city, was to set aside phase 2 of the River District. And what was behind that thinking? I know the vote was quite firmly decided to set that aside for the moment. But what was behind that?
Well, when they went out to tender RFP a year ago, it came back in $1 million over. Now, $1 million over in 20 might not be bad, but when it's $2 million as the intended budget and it's coming in at 3, that's like a 50%. So staff knew that it wouldn't pass, even the previous council. So it got put off and retendered this year with a couple of little changes in it, seeing if it would make it more feasible. And again, it came back in close to $1 million over budget. And, as we just bragged a few minutes ago about trying to keep our taxes low and coming in at 1%, not being able to afford the luxuries of the nice to haves when you have to spend money on the have to haves, such as Alpha Street. If we run into a hill collapse or anything like we did in 8th Street, we want to have our all of our options covered. I'm just going to use another phrase, but it's trying to think long term, but also trying to be responsible that when you pass a low budget, that something comes in $1 million over, that no matter how badly you want it, that you don't just jump at it. So neat project. It may have to be scaled back. We may have to look at some different options of how we do it to get it done, or we may just have to put it on ice for a couple of years while we do something like Alpha Street and a couple of others and bring it back at some point.
Sure, and certainly the project, the River District project, has certainly made a difference in both sides of the river. It's there have been some remarkable and positive. I think of the farmers market, for example, has become a true community hub for events and for people, and it's been great. But like you say, we have a budget.
Yeah, and that phase 1, if this was phase 1, it would have been even a harder decision. Knowing that we've got phase 1 there and that we've already got the market square and have already got concerts and things, we've got a facility there that is more than adequate. If this was phase 1 and we're going from what it used to be like to nothing, that would be a much tougher decision, I think, for council. So this extends could extend or will extend when we get to that beauty, and potentially allows the businesses between 9th and 10th Street to open up their back doors onto First Avenue and do some neat things there. But for now, until we can figure out what we can afford and how we can afford it, then we'll move. And it's not just the money. You think about it, the engineers that we're going to have to go and manage the project, et cetera, can now focus on things like Alpha Street and move that up. So, it's also time management as much as money management.
When I think of, we go back to, as we talked on the Alpha Street Hill rebuild, you go back to the 1970s, that was a railway siding. Where the River District was, that was a railway siding. And, to think of 50 years later, here I say it, 50 years later, it is now we're turning it into something completely different. And that is quite remarkable.
Yeah, the railway came up past the east side CPCN, whichever station that is, straight up and all the way up the back alley. So First Avenue East to 9th Street, so almost to Tim Hortons. Didn't cross onto 9th Street, but stopped just short of it. And then they could switch the rails, and there is an angled bridge that a lot of people still remember at the 10th Street Bridge that went across along the edge of the river, where there's a walkway now to get to what is now the Marine Rail Museum, or the Waterfront Heritage Site, and then of course out the west side. So one was CP, one was CN, and that was the way they got the. It would have been more the railway cars, not more the commercial cars, the transport. One side to the
grain,
other.
that kind of stuff. Sure.
Yeah.
We've just got about 2 or 3 minutes left, but I wanted to touch quickly on the work that's going to be going on at the Tom. Big reconstruction project there. What's the news on that?
Well, again, we've talked about expansion at the Tom, and I think some of the things that needed to be done just on maintenance and upkeep, et cetera, accessibility laws and all those types of things got put on hold, but they need to be done. So it's renovations that absolutely have to be done, and updates to the Tom Thompson Art Gallery to try and bring it back up to standard.
So, and that'll be going on, I gather, this spring and summer.
Well, I noticed when I walked across the bridge and looked up in that direction that there's a lane shut down where the trucks are piled up, and fencing around it, and so they've started.
Well, you realize that when you start to see trucks blocking lanes, the season called construction.
Construction season, yes.
It's construction season. Gee, the snow isn't even gone yet. My golly. But then again, here in Owen Sound, you'll notice that there's fiber optic going in everywhere. There's digging going on, and there's out on the east side, there's construction happening. It's this place is, the stuff is moving.
Well, they're moving soil around next to the new South Bridge for the potential, the intended hotel there. I think you'll see some soil being started to get moved around across from the hospital and East Ridge School as Flato starts to prepare their subdivision. And you'll see some more stuff moving around, I think, up at Heritage Grove as well. So yeah, there's some things going on, and I'm optimistic as we head into spring and hear these things coming.
Well, we'll all watch out for the trucks. Ian, we're just out of time. Thank you for joining us today and bringing thoughts and reflections on what's happening in the city. Always a pleasure. And friends, thank you for joining me on Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. Yes, we'll talk again.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Lovely viewers, it's your host of On the Couch, Antoine El Hashim, reminding you to tune in for every episode of Season 9 of the longest running and most loved local queer talk show on Rogers TV. Check it out.
Calling all journalism students, Omni Television is once again awarding scholarships to qualified students pursuing a career in third language journalism.
I was overjoyed